could be coming his way soon.
All right, Chuck Cooperstein is going to join us here momentarily, the voice of the Mavericks, on what has been a really intriguing up and down roller coaster, and in some cases, depending on who you are or what you thought or what you knew, kind of a shocking week. And yet Donnie Nelson out after 24 years with the Mavericks. I think the last, 17 or so as the director of basketball operations, and Rick Carlisle, 13 years out as head coach, who led them to the World Championship in 2011. There's been a lot of names that have already emerged, whether names for Luka Doncic or names of Mavericks past, but it's been a whirlwind week for the Dallas Mavericks following their series loss to the Clippers. Chuck Cooperstein, if you want inside information, voice of the Mavericks, joins us on SicEm365 Radio. Coop, thank you as always. Man, well, as someone yourself who watches and is right there entrenched at times with the team, how would you describe this week?
I dare say it's the most extraordinary week in the history of the franchise. Now, I wasn't there at the very beginning, when Don Carter and Norm Sanju bought the team in 1980. I wasn't living in Texas at the time, but, I've been here since 1984, and I mean, never has there been upheaval, in the manner that we have seen over the last, 72 hours or so. I mean, we've seen coaches fired. We've seen general managers fired, but we've never seen, and we've seen ownership change, but we've never seen it all coalesce in such short order with everything that's involved.
Chuck, the article that came out in The Athletic obviously seems to a lot of fans like a catalyst for all this, but in a vacuum, if you look at a coach leaving and a GM leaving after a while and a team's been kind of spinning its wheels, it does not seem that odd, but you put those two things together and it's created a firestorm for fans. What are fans supposed to think about how this went down in relation to that column?
Well, I mean, the column was written as a result of, things that had happened over a period of time. It wasn't like, Sam Amick and Tim Cato, woke up on Monday morning and wrote that story and said, well, this is what's going on. There's stuff that has happened over time, clearly, that led in Donnie Nelson's mind to the infringement on what he believed that was his authority. And he decided, to challenge and, see, okay, what's going on here? And obviously, he was told that things are these are the way things are right now, and they parted ways. And then understanding that Donnie hired Rick. In fact, they've known each other basically for 40 years, going back to their time. Donnie's a little bit older, but they both went to the same high school at Worcester Academy in Massachusetts. And when Rick was hired by Donnie, that was the only interview. Donnie never hired anybody else. He knew that Rick Carlisle was going to be his guy. So, when Donnie's out of the picture and Rick's probably looking at it and he's got, 2 years left on his contract and thinking that, maybe his seat is probably warmer than it has ever been in his time in Dallas. And, you don't necessarily want to have a coach working on the last year of his contract, by going to prove himself this year. Would he get an extension at the end of the 22 season? Or would he have to coach the whole thing out and give it everything that was going down? Maybe he's thinking this is the right time to get out. It's just simply the right time to get out. And so the announcement came.
Coop, when the article came out and then Cuban had the tweet that he had basically calling the article BS, and then a couple days later all this happens, what do you think that he meant by it's BS, given the fact that right after he says that, all of this ends up happening?
I'm sure he's probably looking at parts of the article. Now, he used the word total, which, in retrospect, I think he might want to have taken back. But I think there were certain parts of the article that were just not true. A lot of it, I think, probably was true. And in fact, I know a lot of it was true. But I will tell you for sure If you know anything at all about Rick Carlisle, you know that he has an incredible ability to digest information and then to be able to discern what he needs and what he doesn't need in order to give his team the best chance to win. There is no way that anyone, from Mark to Donnie to Bob Voulgaris or anyone else, to Chuck Cooperstein, is going to tell him how to play his team and how to deploy his team. He will make the decisions on his own based on the information that is presented to him. And from that standpoint, if Bob was brought in to give different takes and make Rick think a little bit more about okay, maybe we want to do this or do that, then you know what, that's what the analysts and the analytics people are supposed to do. But to actually say, go to the coach and say, you're going to run this lineup out here, this is how we're going to play, that's just not true. It's just not true.
Mm-hmm. So, Chuck, if you were another NBA team, would you have already called Rick Carlisle?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like if the announcement came at 3:00 yesterday, it's 3:01. I'm absolutely calling somebody. I'm absolutely calling him.
Yep, I would think that he won't be out there for very, very long.
Do you think that he would go for a job where he is going to build something, or something like Portland or Boston that's got guys in place and is maybe just one thing away from being a real contender?
I mean, I think he wants to win. I mean, I think he's been a part of building something. Remember, look, when he came to Dallas, he didn't really have to build it in Dallas. They were a consistent 50-win team at that time. He did build it in the short term in Detroit and did build it in the short term in Indiana. So he's capable of doing both. But I would imagine that, he's looking for the best opportunity to win. And, I don't know if that's Portland, Boston, could be Milwaukee, depending what happens in Game 7 tomorrow night in that series. I mean, there are a whole host of opportunities for him. And as we both have just said, I mean, if he's not at the top of everyone's short list, then there are a lot of people in the NBA who don't know what they're doing.
Chuck, any idea on kind of the team's reaction to the changes this week? And I know that there was a story out there that Luka said he would endorse Jamal Mosley as a replacement. Do you see that as being a place that they look initially, or do you think this might be a wider net they cast?
Oh, no, it absolutely will be a wider net, because ultimately it's going to be the general manager that hires the coach. Mm-hmm. And really, any talk of, who will the coach be without knowing who the general manager is going to be is just extraordinarily premature.
Right.
Having said that, Jamal Mosley is eminently qualified for this job. He is ready for this job. He's interviewed over the last couple of summers, and by all indications, he did really well in these interviews. And yes, he would have the Luka seal of approval, which definitely matters in this situation. But there is also, a big difference between being the guy who works Luka out before every game and being that guy, who is moving 18 inches over into the big chair. Your responsibilities are entirely different at that time. He's no longer necessarily the good cop to the head coach bad cop. He's got to take on a different role at that point. And, I would think that Luka, having been around professional basketball for a decade, even though he's only 22 years old, absolutely understands that the dynamic would change. But it is important to look at Jamal and even see the game that he coached for the Mavericks against the Knicks when Rick had tested positive for COVID. And he did a tremendous job in that game, made the adjustments in the second half that had to be made, and Mavericks had a big win that night. He's ready. He's absolutely ready. But when you haven't had a coaching search for a long time, why wouldn't you cast the widest possible net to get the most ideas about what you think is best to move this team forward, and especially moving Luka forward, that he gets ultimately what he wants.
Chuck, the Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Mavericks, SicEm365 Radio. Do you feel like the comment or the story today that Dirk is now a special advisor, was that in some ways Mark Cuban trying to maybe cool the heat a little bit because he's their Nolan Ryan?
I think there's a germ of truth to that. But I also think that there is no voice right now that Mark would listen to any more than he would listen to Dirk's voice. I mean, Dirk, he acknowledges Dirk made him. Dirk made him as an NBA owner for everything that he did. And so if Dirk is going to be in this role, and if you know anything at all about Dirk does not take on anything without being deadly serious about it. I can't imagine Dirk being any kind of ceremonial advisor here. I think he's going to be very much in the mix here. And again, not that he's perfect, because remember when he was a player, he was the one who really pushed hard for Rajon Rondo to be acquired. And there were a lot of people who thought, by the way, Rick Carlisle didn't think this, that Rondo would work here because they needed to play better defense, and Dirk, wanted a guy who'd get him the ball in the spots that Jason Kidd had gotten him the ball over the previous years. But it obviously didn't work. So, he swung and missed on that one, but it doesn't mean he couldn't swing and hit on some other things and doesn't have, real ideas about, what could make this team better. And so I don't see any harm in bringing him in the mix and having him as a voice to help Mark out once the search firm, headed by Michael Forty, comes up with the names to be presented to him and say, yeah, we like this, we don't like this, and let's move on from there.
So they're going to hire a GM first and then a coach, do you think?
You have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the logical way to do this because it goes from owner to general manager to coach. I mean, why would a general manager come to the team, and especially in this situation? It's one thing if the coach is already established, but he isn't established here. And what do general managers do? What's their primary responsibility to do? Mm-hmm. It's the roster and it's the coaching staff and it's all that stuff. So why you have to do it that way? And Mark has said he will do it that way.
Yeah, and unless it's Jerry Jones, right?
Well, yeah, that's different. But listen, there are those who are looking at Mark right now and thinking that this is just the basketball version of Jerry. Given what happened in as a result of the Athletic article, and I don't know if we're quite at that stage, but we are absolutely at an inflection point for the franchise. Certainly, from the time that Mark bought the team in January of 2000, he's never had a moment like this, and they've got to get it right.
Coop, one more thing, if you don't mind. Obviously, with Luka and the max and all that, and what looked like it would be some momentum despite how they lost that series to the Clippers. Is this a setback in their growth because this is the thing on the table now, and rather than adding pieces to Luka and the Mavericks, or is this just part of what happens?
I mean, we don't know if it's a setback until we get through the summer and we see what the roster looks like. I mean, look, at some point they're going to have a draft, and they're going to have free agency, and there's going to be player procurement, and the issue, who's going to be doing it, and what does it look like, and is it significantly different in tone and style from what we've seen over the last 20 years, whether it be from Nelly first or Donnie, and what the coaching will look like with Rick. Rick not here anymore, and whoever is going to be coaching the team. It's temporary in the moment, and it's significant. I mean, I'm not going to tell you here that none of this really means anything or doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. It means a lot, but ultimately, in the end, it's a significant hurdle that has to be cleared in the process to get ready for the 21-22 season.
All right, Coop. Thanks for your time, man. We appreciate it. Good luck this week with what you're dealing with as well. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Mavericks. It's pretty interesting.